What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. One of my audience members asked a question, and I wanted to go ahead and discuss it from the perspective of an indie developer, and also from the perspective of a gamer who's been playing games like these. And Gaming Outlaws 9765, shout out to you. They said, "What would the chances of a Gotham Knights sequel be now with the release of Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League?" User Mouse replied and said, "I honestly feel like it's higher because of that game. A lot of people dislike Suicide Squad more than Gotham Knights, so maybe they'll give Gotham Knights another chance and realize how good it actually is. If it gets popular enough, perhaps we'll get more content in some form." Now, as to more content with Gotham Knights, I'm not certain about that. I think you have like maybe four major people: production, creative direction, and game production, that have left the studio. They're all in different studios right now. Patrick Redden, Jeff Eleanor, Fleur Marti, and I think Valina Valles, I think that's how you say her name, have all left the studio. They're in different studios right now. However, the biggest challenge with Gotham Knights was a lot of the marketing did not lean in on its target audience. The game should have marketed itself to wanting to appeal to a hardcore RPG audience. That is an audience that is much more willing to take its time to engage with video games differently than a casual audience, or what I call a modern audience, because that's what a lot of people want to say it's these days. And the reason I use the word modern is not because I want to, throw shade at anybody. It's because Street Fighter 6 used the word modern in its new mechanic to appeal to a broader audience when it comes to its gameplay. Meaning, in their game, they actually took the time to create two other input versions of the game where you can actually use simpler controls to do and execute harder combos, or even harder to execute gameplay parameters. And so they called them the modern controls. In Tekken 8 just recently, they called them easy inputs. And these are Japanese developers who usually pride themselves on making games that are slightly challenging than, the average game developer. If you think about From Software, if you think about all of these other developers, most of their much more hardcore games don't necessarily seem to have the broader appeal. It wasn't until Elden Ring, where they kind of softened the blow that Dark Souls gives you, that it drew a lot of people in. So for the sake of making money, it seems like developers have to basically, appeal to a lot of a lot of people to be able to get more sales. However, some games and some developers, I think, need to establish their identity, and Gotham Knights was the opportunity for Warner Brothers Montreal to establish its identity as, we want to make a hardcore RPG superhero experience unapologetically, and not have to brand the game in a way that they put elements in there that seem to be much more user friendly when the game requires a very heavy skill curve. So a lot of people were looking at the game going, okay, this game looks like I can actually play it, right? And then they pick the game up and then they realize, hey, the game is not flowing as smooth as the Arkham games for me, when in reality, a game like Gotham Knights, your flow increases as you're actually executing combat the way that it's been designed, using timed attacks, using a lot of things, unlike the Arkham games where if you hit attack, you can fly to one side of the map, kick a guy there, look at that. Look, guys, did you just see that? Batman is a human being, but boy is a bat. He can literally leap from one part of the, stage to the other and take everybody out, and I don't have to do anything. Whereas if I'm playing Gotham Knights, in order for me to be able to close the gap, I have to use all my tools. I have to manually control the game. I have to literally move directional wise. I have to consider all of these parameters, my location, where my camera is facing, because my abilities are only going to face a certain direction. It's not going to auto correct for me like the Arkham games do. And so these challenges put in a video game, you have to market it to an audience that is much more willing to deal with them, and so not have basically false expectations being placed on your game. So this is where I think the biggest challenge for Gotham Knights was, and the game is a good game in my opinion. The combat system is quite solid. The story I have qualms with. The way they actually represented the open world, I have some qualms with as well. But deep down, mechanical wise, there's no way the programmers of this game have left. They are all still at Warner Brothers Montreal because they can make games. And that's how you know that they're, in my opinion anyways, they're a team of, really solid, gameplay programmers that still are there. Advanced gameplay programmers, combat designers that can really do some solid work. All they need is somebody with a creative vision, or at least they need to be able to say, okay, Whoever is calling the shots needs to just let the creative vision just flow with the talents of these folk to be able to bring a game that is marketable. And sadly enough, because of the way these big companies, basically pander to, wider and broader audiences, it's probably going to be a thing where they're going to have to make a dumbed down version of a game like this. Because if you guys remember in Arkham Knight, what was the biggest critique from a gameplay perspective from Batman Arkham Knight? It's right here in front of you. It was a Batmobile. Now, I get it. They use the Batmobile a lot in the game. It was a lot. We used to think it was oversaturation, but having played the other Spider-Man games where they've made like almost 4 of those games and we haven't seen any, straight up unique mechanic, that actually changes the entirety of the game like the Batmobile did, I think it was very appropriate that the third game had that amount. But the biggest challenge was the game Batmobile required a lot more skill than your free flow combat. It did. It required you to be able to drive like you were running Need for Speed. It required for you to be able to, coordinate and, pretty much fight drones and stuff in locked, battles and locked environments. It wasn't the easiest, set of parameters to basically go ahead and execute. In fact, I thought that the developers actually required a little bit of, execution in this flawlessly anyways, for the most part, because the moment you started playing the game on a much higher difficulty, the tank battles and the drone battles really started getting annoying and such. So I think this was partially part of the criticism, including the fact that it was used a lot. I won't say oversaturated, but it was used a lot because like in the Joker missions and all. So these things are, in my opinion, things that would have to be looked at very carefully as to how exactly, the developers are to bring out a game like this. And so even with all my criticisms for Gotham Knights being able to, basically appeal to a broader audience, the developers tried their best to make an easy, normal, and hard difficulty. But again, the biggest challenge were from people that are, pretty much used to be, in a sense, the gatekeepers of a lot of the, perception of these games, the reviewers, the outlets, whom most of them don't necessarily look at a video game from the perspective of what that video game is and would not bother to play the game. In this particular, scenario with Gotham Knights, I've made about 4 videos where I've pointed out reviewers who have big followings actually mischaracterize Gotham Knights. White Light is one of them. His video has 1 million views. Skill Up is another one. His video has almost 1 million views. Monty Xander did a 3-hour critique of Gotham Knights and made mistakes about the combat, made some very wild claims that all the different knights played the same way. Luke Stevens was another one who actually lied about the game and talked nonsense about the game's loot system, talked about mechanics that he thought needed to be in the game that are in the game and said they were not in the game. And you just see the whole pile of, cow poop all over the place with these so-called reviewers or critics just pretty much destroying the game's credibility at every single, point of contention that they could, because they couldn't be bothered to play the game. They couldn't be bothered to actually learn the game. And many of them are not superhero fans. That's just the reality. I can't believe, and I still say this till today, I cannot believe DC fans allowed for the plebs of the internet whose only skill is being able to carry a camera and a microphone, allowed for them to be able to give them the wrong impression of a game that was made for them. This is, in my opinion, from a superhero perspective, one of the best gameplay loops that you have out there. I think this is basically what actually executes it even better than all of the other games that we've played as superhero games and we've hailed. This game, at the end game, it really gets the job done because it's a night action game. I'm a superhero. I put on a mask and I put on a cape and I go out there and I beat bad guys every night. No other game, no other superhero game has done this particular paradigm. Yet, I see a lot of DC fans have fallen and taken the bait on that. Instead of them to pay attention with their ears, engage the content, know exactly what was made, and be able to see, oh, possibly we might have on our hands a game that actually innovated out of the base superhero formula that the Arkham games and the Spider-Man games have followed. Unless, of course, you want the 5th Arkham game and the 7th Spider-Man game to all be generic, and there'll be companies that will give them to you. Like Sony, they want to sell you Spider-Man 3 in 3 parts, so expect yourself another 3 Spider-Man games in Spider-Man 3, and all of this is going to be added to the 2018 Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2, so you're going to be getting 6 generic games that are not going to really innovate or do anything differently. just because you just didn't have enough patience to just learn button controls, which are built on the basis of fighting games, and learn that, oh, an RPG, I have to approach it differently. My gear, my weapons, the way that I play all come together to form my player. And sometimes I got to just do a little bit of work to achieve something. And I think this is a very big, conversation that needs to be had. Maybe the developers have to make the next, Gotham Knights game the reviewers' preferred game before we actually say, "Yay, we got a good game." When we actually got a good game, and the reviewers told the fans, "Oh, the game is not a good game." Most fans are still looking at the game, going, "I don't know if I should play it. I don't know if I want to play it." When in reality, it's like, "Yo, the game is already cheap. Why not pick it up for a few dollars and see for yourself?" So these are some of the challenges that I think a lot of developers are facing and are going to face when the conversation comes into perspective. The Suicide Squad conversation, that one was not really a surprise to me. I already kind of knew that fans were going to have this kind of a visceral reaction to it because the game really does step outside of its, outside of the established parameters for superhero games. Like, oh, are you kidding me? This is a shooter. This is not necessarily a game where you're beating everybody. So, a lot of these questions have to be asked and answered later on, but the thought of a second Gotham Knights game is actually much more realistic than we are seeing right now. Because at first, people were like, "Oh, Gotham Knights failed" and all this stuff. But I told people, I said, I hope you keep up the same energy for Suicide Squad and, realize that you're judging this Gotham Knights game on parameters that don't make any sense because you're wanting them to have made another Arkham game when the Arkham game is for Rocksteady. The Arkham game is not for Warner Brothers Montreal. So Gotham Knights is Warner Brothers Montreal's, it's their IP, it's their baby, it's what they were given to make. So I'm hoping that somebody will have enough vision to be able to have them actually get the game, continued and actually make it much more of a hardcore. Like make the gear system, make it much more deeper. Now let their boots even have stats. Let their gloves have stats. Let their cowl have stats. Let's go. That's basically the hardcore RPG-esque, style thing. Like let their mod chips, be made by Wayne Industries and made by freaking Luther Industries. All this easy nonsense that the Arkham games have basically spoiled us with. Let them go away so that we can know the difference between, okay, who really wants to actually engage in a video game or who wants to be spoon-fed and have their hands held by a video game. I think that's basically what needs to be done because From Software did this unapologetically with the, Souls games and then eventually made a game that was much more casual friendly. So I think video game companies should be able to do this and establish their identity unapologetically and then let their fan bases grow because there are a lot of players who would play a game like that. Obviously, there are a lot of players who play games like The Division, a lot of players who play games like Destiny, a lot of players who play games like Rust and, challenging games that are quite annoying when you actually think about them. So I think many players, in the space will probably be able to respect in my opinion, a game design like that. But anyways, I just want to share my thoughts on this. Thanks so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. And hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.